Hello everyone, this is your host Umi Pandey, and again we are here today with another session with our today's author Ramachandran Rajsekharan sir, and we will be discussing about him and his writing career till this date. Along with that, we will also discuss about his book Smiling in My Sleep. So first of all, sir, we are very happy to have you on our live session today, and I'm really looking forward to have more discussions in today's session. And I also believe that we will discuss about a lot of things today. So, sir, welcome here.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
So, sir, I would like to request you to give a little introduction about you to our viewers.
I'm actually a finance professional. I have not written any poems till I reached the age of 60. My first poem was written after 60 years of age.
Okay.
So probably poetry was already there because my parents were both poets. They are known in their own way. My father used to write in English and my mother in my native tongue, Malayalam. So soon after, 60, I happened to observe a sight when I was traveling on an assignment. My car was stopped in the highway due to traffic. It was around 2:30 in the afternoon. It was pretty hot outside. Car interior was, of course, air conditioned. So I noted a lady. There is a small chapel, roadside chapel. A lady was praying intensely without noticing the sounds of the traffic or these crazy horns. And so I was suddenly fascinated by that. And I had to be there for some time because the traffic was not moving. That moved something in me. I thought that if somebody has to pray at this time, at the hot, this thing, just lighting a candle, though then I penned my first poem, The Candle Melts Off My Head. Then suddenly it flows like that. It happened just like that. It was a twist which was not expected because I'm a very technical person in my profession. And I was confined to my professional field for a long. But I am an enthusiast reader because I am born and brought up in an environment where reading was inculcated since my early childhood. So the parents, my grandparents, everybody has in that sense influenced me into the world of books, but not in the world of poems. In fact, my first poem was published 16 years after the death of my mother. And I remember when I was about 16, those days I used to play cricket league on Sundays, and mother invariably had to attend some literary poetical meetings where she used to rent. I used to listen to the renditions by different poets, including my mother. So I was little uneasy about poetry in the first place at that time. But then probably by chance, I penned my first book after 16 years of that. So something it was there in my genes. I don't know much more than that. But when I started, then see, my profession also demands certain amount of attention, observation of surroundings. So that combined with my genes probably would have inspired my first poem. So that is.
Yes. Yes, sir. Do you need to say something? Okay.
No. Continue, please.
Okay. So, sir, this is such a different story. How did you suddenly start writing, belonging to a different profession? Because coming to this age, like a hobby you haven't thought about it the whole life, and like suddenly you observe something and start writing. It's quite a different story because like oftenly I see that people take time to write, but suddenly going into the this profession, being a writer, it's itself a different thing. I like I am also into these things, but obviously this takes a lot of courage to come out as a writer to poet. So like how was the first experience when you decided that it is the time I should publish a book, my poems, I should publish, I should make it available for the larger number of readers. What did like inspire you that time?
It needed some amount of persuasion from my friends. I joined a group called international group called All Poetry, and there I used to post my poems. And then suddenly I found that a lot of people are showing interest in my poems and making interesting comments about that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought of, I'm using the befitting metaphors, or I'm using a language which can be related to all and on the subjects which I observe intently. Then I thought, I have a fair amount of acceptance. My first poem came in an anthology published by All Poetry, which was edited by Kevin Wack. That poem was titled Pope. It was inspired by an image of Pope walking alone in the streets of Rome when the pandemic struck very hard, and how Pope prayed for all. And the square before this thing was totally empty. So that was accepted and published in the anthology. That gave me some amount of confidence. Then, of course, when I wrote my first book, everybody found it very relatable because my topics were all relatable, which is related intensely to nature, surroundings, the part of familial relationships, my nostalgic childhood, and things like that. So people who stayed away from poetry from some reason or other found my poems relatable. And I have got a reasonably good readership for my first book. It was encouraging. So that was what I thought of venturing into my second book. All along, I should mention a couple of people here. There was one of my mentors who was my seniors, one of my senior most person in my, who guided me in the early stages of my career of profession. He encouraged me to write. It normally not happens. Professional encouraging other pen poems and all that. Then my friends in art poetry, especially there is a Australian called Robin Shelters, and many such friends I would not like to mention, who are known to me, were kind enough to encourage me. That was sort of, and my family was also with me all the time. My wife used to be my biggest critic. She said, I was always confused about in and on at the right place, and she said it has to be made on. When I use in, I remember still, she still is not satisfied by my using child sat in the chair in one of my first published books, one poem. She said it should have been on the chair, like that. So I don't write so many poems. I write probably one in a week. Or it takes time. Something I note nowadays, I note in my mobile notepad, and then comes back, revisit it when it gets time, when I get time. And COVID, of course, in that way helped with a little period of prolonged rest in that way. Though it was not something nice to say about COVID, that COVID inspired my poetry or encouraged my poetry in some way.
So it's not like that you are the first person who is saying COVID inspired us to like write. I have met lot of authors who like give their credibility to COVID time, that they started writing. They realized that they can do something in this genre. They can write. So it's like such a, you said that some people had influence in your life, and I'm really glad that as a author, as a poet, you found your required audience that time. Otherwise it happens ki lot of people get discouraged in this journey, that whether it's worthy or not, we have questions on ourselves, that we are writing that good enough or not. So sir, in your this poetry book, Smiling in My Sleep, I see that your contents are divided into two parts, memories and life. Can you explain a little bit why is that so?
No, actually, memories are always inspiring. I can draw energy from my memories because the world has changed so much from my childhood days.
Mm,
I remember in my ancient my ancestral village, where
mm,
I used to go accompany my grandmother in
mm,
the vacation. There was no electricity. There was 360-degree view of paddy field and a old dusty country road
mm,
beyond the paddy field, and people walking in the night with this sort of torch-like, flame-like
mm.
torches and all that.
Yes.
Now, if I go there, I
Mm,
find that the whole beauty of the paddy field has been taken away by small concrete jungles. The entire village has
mm,
changed its topography. And
mm,
so I thought that whatever etched in my memory
mm,
would be more, uh, more has gone into my subconscious like anything. It
mm,
comes flowing like that. I've written a poem in this book about my grandmother, where I could, I've learned a lot of Indian mythology from her, her renditions when I used to lie with her in my childhood, in my adulthood, or teenage, probably. And she used to recite all this Mahabharata, Ramayana, and explain to me the contextual meaning of various things,
mm,
and what it spiritually means, and what it spiritually not means. So that was indeed inspiring. So I go back to a period of time which is no longer known to the modern world as it is, because I reside in Kerala. It's
mm,
a very dense state,
mm,
and now I cannot even uh, properly know. Only my driver knows the exact route to my house, ancestral house, which is still retained there for the memory's sake. But I cannot just make, that place was so much of dense teak wood forest and all that has now turned into a sort of a concrete jungle.
mm.
It's an amazing way how development makes that difference. Now we hear about Joshimat thing and all that. I can relate to that, how much, we are cutting at the basic roots of our tree of existence itself in some way or other. It happens for, it may be happening for the good, or it happens for the worse. I can't say, but I can really distinguish the difference.
Yes.
I'm used to a certain level of comfort, but then I'm satisfied at that.
Mm,
But now my children are not like that. They demand much more. So I'm more now daughter to my grandchild. He
mm.
is easily satisfied with some flowers, some birds, and all that. Like that, you understand.
Yes. So sir, as you are talking about development, the development we see every day, we see the physical changes around us, and we see it is a development. But at the same time, like, it's only physical development that we see, not our mental development. Sometimes it also happens that even if like living in a very posh area, very luxury life, we miss something in our life. that the raw memories we used to have in our childhood. So in this case, I think, sir, development has a lot of role in our life, but it's also kind of not giving us that mental peace that we once used to feel. So I believe that. So, sir, do you think yourself as a good observer or like good poet? Because when I go through, I haven't read your poems yet, but if I see their like titles, it's like kind of related to something surrounding us, like the morning after the rains, the sequeling game, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. All these things we have like we have heard this earlier. We have seen this in our daily life. So, what do you think? Are you like? Do you consider yourself as a good observer?
No, actually, see, all these poems which you have used, referred
Yes,
to that morning after rains and
yes, sir.
all, all related to my grandson. The
Okay.
way I carry him, I see the world through his eyes. Exactly, I convey to the world. You know, the tingle, tingle, little star.
Mm.
See, in my teenage, I used to read a lot of Agatha Christie books.
Mm.
Agatha Christie and Poirot was my favorite author at that.
Mm.
And this, the way Christie used to take us through the English villages,
Mm.
Miss Marple stories for that, all that. So that I began seeing England through the other's eyes. Like
Mm.
that now, I'm trying to go back to my childhood, related to my grandchild, and whatever he says, I have put all these three poems which I have picked. One is interesting about the Agatha Christie books.
Mm.
I've got a library, I have got a full collection of Agatha Christie, and he once found that it was interesting that some of the poems had the imprint of stars on that.
Mm.
And then he used to mimic me reading, browsing as a serious reader and all that. But then he found the star,
Mm.
then he sorted the books on the basis of the stars. And he said, no, I was not understanding what he's doing. He's throwing some books simply casually away. And
Mm.
it is very hard exercise for me to take it back and put it back, and he immediately throws it away. I sort of wondered what this boy is doing, and this suddenly showed me the star and showed me the sky. Star, star. He said, acha, star, star. So that strikes,
Yes.
Twinkle, twinkle, star is a rhyme we have all uh, learned in our childhood.
Yes.
So all these poems of that group,
Mm.
I probably can divide the book, into that memories, some of my grandson poems,
Mm.
and then some of my spiritual poems. There is one poem called Renuga in there,
Mm.
which is which is an adaptation of what I had written, uh, uh, a poem written by my mother.
Okay.
It's not translation, but a poetic adaptation where she, probably in her late 60s or early 70s, have written this poem, questioning that Renuga slaying by Lord Parashuram.
Mm.
And the moment I wrote this poem, and this poem got a special recognition from all poetry group, I sent it to some of my relatives.
Mm.
After some time, she with some of hesitation pointed out, send me this thing, because she used to circulate in her group in Singapore, and she got a reply from somebody
Mm.
who has exactly written a poem justifying Parshurama's slaying of his mother. And my poem was questioning how can a son just chop off the mother's mother's head. And I found it interesting, how can that be done?
Yes.
Now, how can a parent, a son kill a parent? It's sort of unimaginable for me.
Yes.
Then I have another poem here on Christ. I see magnificent buildings, churches, and all that. And Christ, we all know, has gone on a bed in a stable, the commonest of common place.
Yes.
So that sort of things, I find it upsets the symmetry of thinking, the philosophy that is being taught, and the symmetry of the perspectives presented from some viewpoints, where the deeper layer meaning is in fact to the contrary. And other poems, you can see that I have tried some romantic poems where the mind flows like a river and all that, you can see. That is where two people lie in the same room, but thinking has two perspectives, thinking in two directions. One is not afraid, sleeping in tranquility. Other one is upset what is going to happen next morning.
Yes.
These sort of things happen.
So,
and I can go on explaining poems like that, but then these are coming at some moment, then it stays in my mind for some time. Then probably some editing is done to finish it off.
Okay. So
you are getting my you are getting my perspective.
Yes, sir, definitely. So this is actually like while you were explaining your things, I was just scrolling to find this poem Renuka, so that I can have an understanding what are you saying. So like I like to read 4 lines for our audience, just to have an idea how spirituality is there. Renuka woke up from sleep, took the cloth that slid from her shoulders with the right hand, covered her body and wiped her face, saw the sage husband and her sons, looked at them with the pale face, then asked the fifth son, whose face shone with the hollow of father's bone. Her eyes shone like fire. Did you beg your father for my life? After slaying me at his command, was it for the breast milk you grew upon, or the lullabies for you as a child? Do you need a mother or a wife for your Brahmista father as the vessel of the husband? So, this is some lines from this poem. Okay, so sir, this poem is a poetic adaptation of the poem written by your mother in Malayalam with same title. Okay, that you said. That's so sweet.
Exactly.
So, sir, as you said that you have written book already. So, as a writer or as a poet, how was your journey till now? So, sir,
Pardon?
which yes. So, I'm asking as a writer, how was your journey so far? Like, how did you see yourself growth like in this field as a being writer? As you said that you started very late in this journey, and one of the questions is that, sir, how like this book we are discussing today, like Smiling in My Sleep, how many books you have already published before this?
I published only one poem. This is the second book.
Okay,
This is the second
book. Okay, so sir, I would like to know about your journey till far as an author, your growth. I want to know about that.
Now I am ready to publish another five books actually. That much poems I have written.
Okay.
And I'm satisfied that reasonably they are acceptable, credible. Because my international poetry friends, all appreciates that.
Okay. So,
So
sir,
when I wrote my first poem and I sent it to somebody, and they said, she asked me, she was actually a journalist, senior journalist. She told me, your poems have the raw material. I advise you to read Neruda or Emily Dickinson.
Okay.
But then, more than these two poets, probably Khalil Gibran is my favorite in that way. That way, I have not seen two poets who are writing exactly in the same way.
Yes.
Each poet has his own. I recently read one poem written by Thomas Hardy about Christmas 1924. That is the title of the poem, which very simply states that on Christmas we pray for peace, and we employ thousands of vicars to conduct midnight masses. And after 2000 years, we have reached up to poison gas. Now you see that now we are having these people worrying about the what is this nuclear bombs and things like that. So from how distant we are from whatever has been spiritually conveyed to us in that sense. So we have to live in the present. We cannot worry about the future. So as a poet, I am satisfied in that way.
Okay. And sir, as any difficulty you faced then, like when you started writing, any thought when you felt like just leaving the journey, just stop writing? Because sir, what happens, I have talked with some authors and poets. They say that once they start writing, they get appraisal from people, they get appreciation, and maintaining that level is quite difficult for them. So sometimes it also happens that they feel like they're not contributing much to this their journey. They're repeating the same thing again and again, and eventually they start they stop giving any effort to their journey so far. So did anything happen to you like that?
Absolutely not. In fact, I am enjoying the joy of writing, and I can probably read you a couple of lines from my recent poem, which is absolutely written from the type of poems I am reading of late. My latest poem is about how marital discords affects children's psyche, or how abuses are happening all around us, and how. Now I can read a couple of lines.
Yes, sir.
At the distant horizon, in the molten sky of sunset, rain clouds gathering strength. Now Mama went into a shell, Papa into the sky. She felt like an orphan now and then. So this is a line from my latest poem, which is an absolutely different from whatever memories which I've written about. My parents were a wonderful. I had a wonderful familial ambience. So that is enough joy to remember. And then I am fascinated by nature. Of course, trees are the balancing force of life. Actually, we exhale carbon dioxide, inhale oxygen, and trees do the otherwise. And one of other poems, I've written recently is about news inspired by a news of suicide. That is The Girl Left Early. Girl Left Early is the title. And the girl wrote her last entry in the journal, put the full stop, then riding the raven flew off from the window sill. Investigating magistrate bound to proceed as per law. What the use? Girl has left early. She will not bloom as the red tulip, nor fly as a red cardinal. Melancholy of poppy flowers, reverberates. Girl left early. Now these things are painful. This is something we have not known.
Yes.
And a lot of poems I read, are teenage love poems. No, I cannot go back to that type
Mm.
of writing because I now has grown up sufficiently
Mhm.
to understand that life is not
Mm.
infatuation, that you don't marry for fighting for pet egos. Often this happens. So these discords affects the children, and that affect the psyche. Probably somebody exploit that situation and all that. This is very painful. But it takes years and years to know another person.
Mm.
There's a poem in my book called 34th, which I wrote on our 34th wedding anniversary. That is sort of celebration of that. So the joy of writing is something different.
Mm.
You are not writing for the readers per se at that moment. You are writing for yourself. But when somebody reads and tells you that, no, this poem is interesting, somebody lists this as one of my wonderful poems and all that, then that adds spice to that. I recently I am a senior citizen that way. I'm a person is dependent on immunosuppressants. I have to suppress my immunity. That way, when you ask that whether you enjoyed the COVID, that I have not actually been enjoying that. I was been in strict confinement because even slight this thing, my compromised immunity would have hurt me. So I have pill box. I've taken a lot of pills, so I often forget to do that because that taking pills is not something very interesting.
Yes.
In the place of something more delectable. So I find a sort of romanticism in writing about the pill box
Mm.
because that way somebody cares for you with that intensity,
Mm.
gives you tremendous amount of joy.
Yes.
Or you see a flower, no? A flower we observe every day. The flower dances like a queen of the garden for some days and then fell off and just goes like that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have observed that flower long time, but it never inspired poetry in me. Then one fine morning, I see the flower, take little close look at that, and then I see whether it is still there or not.
Mm.
So that type of observations, and we look at people's face, we look at things, we look at the busy streets or the depleting forest or surroundings like what Joshi Bhatt is now. Bhatt is probably one of the most famous place for Adi Shankara heritage and all that. But then, somewhere the global warming is happening. And so these are self-destructive instincts of humanity. So to write against that is also joyful. And in that poem of Renuga, which you referred, the idea what struck me is that how can a son do that mother? And how can any husband treat his wife as something bound to obey and bear children? These are not concepts of life. No, I don't think it appeals to you, and it appeals not to me also. Because these are different, but then these are relatable.
So, such an insightful thing you shared with us today. It's like more than just having a discussion. Uh, from Evans Publishing, we wish you a lot of wishes for your this book. Hope you prosper as a writer, as a poet, and may whoever watches this video go and purchase your book. Maybe it's available on Amazon and like Evans Publishing page also.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised by the viewership, readership I got for my first, because for a person, when you are, people ask me about the Instagram ID. I don't have an Instagram ID. I have not a Facebook ID. I don't even like this thing, but this has become now a part of my life.
Yes.
How I hate this thing is, but then how I am attached to this thing is also wonderful. So sometimes you go crazy. I tried being in Facebook for some time, some before I was 60 and all that. But I got fed up with this type of messages sharing and all that. I'm not saying that it is per se bad, but then see, if we can dispense away with all that and then sink into a world of our own little dreams. Now, after all, life is very short. That's why that about my first book talks about that. The title poem, that Dewdrop and Banyan Tree. This banyan tree is, as you know, is iconic tree of India, where it's so roots, and before every temple you can see a banyan tree with its shivering leaves and all that. But it has a longevity, whereas the dewdrop is fresh, it just dances down and then gets drenched and lost in the, so its lifespan is so. So if we have to realize that, as Carl Sagan has written in this pale blue dot, that this is a planet, which is so small as compared to the universe, which Lord Krishna himself disclosed, both to Arjun and his foster mother Yashoda. I've written a poem about my Yashoda in this. So that is why, we small humans are, wheeled by our petty, what we call Maya and all that, blinded by our petty egos, petty emotions, and then we are fighting each other. For what? How long? What is the quality life?
Yes.
Some people are, when I remember my mother, she got a stroke at that time. My father had Parkinson's and he died a very painful death. These things are really showing that that life is very short, and if you don't enjoy life in that brief span, then you are lost. You have lost something precious. I've written an old poem on coming down